I think a big part of the challenge too, and it's really interesting. You mentioned why my Winnipeg. How many high school students do you think there are in Canada who actually got access and saw that film?
It was out in theaters for a couple of weeks here in Toronto. I think if it was, let's say, shown through Real Canada, then more people would have access to it. But I don't understand why films like that aren't the ones that are really being shown.
Being pushed, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you find if you had more accessibility to Canadian films, you would go see more?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a film about Toronto specifically a while ago. I don't know if it was any good, but it was called Toronto Stories.
Oh,
I thought,
it was on a plane.
This is kind of interesting. But it played at one theater, the Royal, for 2 weeks, and I thought for really a film about Toronto, and I think it got fairly good reviews. There's definitely a lack of accessibility in that extent, and you can watch Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen at thousands upon thousands of theaters.
When you hear people talk about the Canadian film industry, do you, and be straight with me, do you take pride in the stuff that we make, or do you think a popular reaction is that it's lame or uncool?
I don't agree with taking pride from something just because it's our nation's films. I think the films need to be taken film by film, and that's what matters, whether or not they are good films. And I agree that accessibility is a huge problem, but there is very much a stigma in our culture against our own film industry, and instead accepting American films. I mean, it's true of most places, the idea of accepting commercial films above all else. But like, for example, my personal favorite Canadian film is one that's completely inaccessible.
What's that?
It's called The Heart of London. It's an experimental film by Jack Chambers.
Never heard of it. Good.
It's nearly it took quite a while to find.
Yeah. And would you say that prior to Real Canada and after that your opinions have changed, or are you relatively still the same after this experience?
Well, right after seeing that one movie, I get my opinions of the South have changed a lot, and in that one topic. But about Canadian film in particular, not really. Yeah.
No, my opinion hasn't been changed at all. It's only a Canadian film in that the guy who directed it was Canadian, so I guess from a pragmatic standpoint, it's just a movie about Mississippi.
I agree. I don't think my opinion has changed, but that's also because I prefer to see films from around the world as a viewer of world cinema, rather just limit myself and put Canadian cinema or American cinema, let's say, above all.
Just a final question, just to sort of put your 2 points together. Do you think that to be a Canadian film, it has to have references to taking place within Canada, or can we tell Canadian stories about world subjects?
Yeah, I think of course we can. I think the fact whether or not it's a Canadian film is entirely irrelevant. It can be a good film, and that's all I'm concerned about. Whether that film comes from Canada or the US or Iraq, it doesn't really matter, because as long as it's a good film, I'm going to go out and see it, as long as it's accessible.
I think it's in the best interests of the National Film Board of Canada, or whoever really cares about the Canadian film industry, to just concentrate on promoting and putting out the best movies possible, because if you want a good Canadian film industry, you need good Canadian movies.